What does it take to scale a mortgage business with your spouse? Well, today's guests, Erik and Elisha Norcott from Assurance Mortgages, share with me how they built a fantastic mortgage business, but also managed to stay in alignment with their marriage as well as raising their kids. We talk about how they went from their previous careers into this business. We talked about building a brand without a logo. And we talked about how they have two different voices in their marketing, but they have one message and how it works. We also dive into dividing the labor and who's doing what. If you're working with your significant other or thinking about it, I think you're really going to dig this conversation. It'll help you see what's possible. Hey, I'm Scott Beckford. This is the I Love Mortgage Brokering podcast. And each week we bring you guests and people that can help you scale your mortgage business or just give you insights. One of the things I always say is there's no problem in your mortgage business someone else hasn't already solved. Your problem is who's got the answer, who's already solved it. The idea is these shows will help you with that. Before we jump into this episode, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Ownwell. Ownwell is an amazing tool for mortgage brokers to monitor their clients' buying power as well as their home equity. They send these reports every month that have a very high open rate, click rate of 60+%, and which is cool. Opening is one thing, but it creates all these conversations around, oh, I didn't know I could do that. You mean I can actually maybe look at refinancing, or I have equity, I could buy something else. And what we found is that these create amazing conversations. And if you have a decent database yourself, it's really effective. And if you have referral partners, which if you've been doing this for a long time, you can even adopt their databases and market to them as well to great deals for everybody. Check them out at ownwell.ca/Scott and check out this conversation with Erik and Elisha.
Hey, how's it going, Scott?
It's fantastic. So I'm excited to chat with you. I often only interview one person at a time, but you guys are a dynamic duo, power couple that work together. And I thought this would be there's a bunch of stuff I want to talk about, but I want to talk about that in terms of working together, but also some other cool things. Maybe I'll start off with you, Elisha. Tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got in the mortgage biz, and then I'll get your input, Erik.
I actually came in secondarily to Erik. So after... It almost makes more sense to start with him. But
sure. Okay. I started with Elisha because the way that the name was written when you came in was Elisha and Erik. And I thought, okay, I'll start that way. That was literally the thinking on the name. You guys can't see this if you're listening. But go ahead, Erik, you tell me how you guys got into it. And then Elisha how she joined.
Yeah, no worries. My story is a bit convoluted, but I'll kind of try to keep it relatively concise for you. I started out actually not even in the mortgage space. I think my story kind of starts before that, where I was introduced into the finance world. Really, I worked in the stock market first as a stock broker, and then I transitioned from that into essentially selling stock by way of investor relations. So being essentially a stock promoter. Worked in Vancouver in the TSX Venture, so it was kind of it was very salesy in a sense.
Was this like the Wolf of Wall Street? Listen, I got something that just came across my desk, and I thought I had to call you. Just kidding.
No, it actually was kind of like that. It was pretty funny. It was a hustle game, and you would be on the phone with retail and institutional investors, essentially pitching your story and trying to move stock. But the industry, kind of at the tail end of the 2008 crisis, as things were kind of falling off, there was less money going into the speculative stocks. And that's because that's kind of more like a gambling space as far as investors look at it. Mm-hmm. And so those companies started thinning out. The company I was with at that time basically folded. Just the business kind of died out. And so that company folded and closed its doors. And at that point, I kind of looked at the whole industry as a whole. Instead of kind of parlaying into a new company within the same space, I just said, you know what? I see this as a bit of a dying animal here, and I wanted to move on. So by way of a headhunter that I was working with, he was shopping me around to various different positions, and I had no interest whatsoever to go into mortgages at the time. But he knew my skill set. He had a client who was a big name in the industry, one of the larger boutique brokerages, and he said, you just got to connect with this guy. I said, he's the real deal. So I went through a series of interviews with him. I didn't even have my mortgage broker's license at the time, but he basically said, I wanted to give you this position. I want to pay for you to get your license and give you a salary as you go through it. So I did that, hustled my way through that, and then started pounding the phones with him. His style of brokering was really that he had a very large book, something to the tune of about 20,000 clients. And we just essentially worked his book. So it was refinances, renewals, and it was a hustler game. So we weren't getting inbound calls. We were doing outbound calls, doing what we called physicals, or basically mortgage reviews, looking for opportunity to help save the client money. And once we found those opportunities, we would process the deals and then on to the next.
Yeah, and
how long were you there?
So I was with that company for about 3 years, and then it was I was at a point where I thought I'd found my footing. I was quite successful with him, and when I was breaking down how the splits were paid out, the money most of it was going to the house, and it didn't make a lot of sense to me. The way I was computing things in my brain. I had my first child at the time, my first son. And so I wanted to build something out for myself, something that I could retire with, something that, I could eat what I was killing rather than feeding too many other mouths. And so I started my own little independent shop. And from there, we've sort of slowly just kept
growing it. And where did you come in, Elisha? Where did you guys start working? And what was your background prior to mortgages?
Well, and from an outsider's perspective, as his partner at the time while he was going through this, we were thinking he was killing it, bringing in the goal that his boss gave each broker that worked for him was 10 deals a month. So Erik was working hard, and he thought his split was 40-60, so he'd make 40%, but then really there was no volume bonus, there was nothing. So he was making like 25%, which at the time, if the average deal was $4,000, just to earn $10,000, he's making doing 10 deals. And so It was very eye-opening when he realized that. But nonetheless, he went out on his own, and I was a dental hygienist for nearly 10 years. And at the time, we had made the move to Kelowna, and he had gone independent at that point. And he was commuting for like almost 6 months. So he'd leave Monday morning, drive to Vancouver, stay in White Rock with his mom, and he had rented an office space on Broadway. So he'd work Monday to Thursday on Broadway, drive home Thursday night, work from home Friday. And then I was pregnant with our daughter, and I was like, you can't be doing this anymore. We're coming into winter. I do not want you traveling. And at the time, I started rolling the idea in my head of, you know what, you talk to me every single night about mortgages. I feel like I know more than I should know.
Yeah, you're kind of you might as well just help me with this rather than just having me vent at you.
Totally. I'm like, I feel like I know how to do a mortgage, and I don't know how to do a mortgage yet. So I told him towards the end of my, before I went on medical leave, I was like, you know what, I'm going to enroll at UBC and get my license too. That was a scary thing, and we really kind of argued about that. But I was like, I'm not going to go back to hygiene at this point. I am
because hygiene is it's a good paying job.
It's a good paying job. And I was already at the sort of height of my career. I was already working for a specialist. I was already getting paid more than the norm. But also I have children, and I used to be able to go to yoga after work. I used to be able to care for my body a little bit better. And now it's like, I'm rushing home. I'm in the hygiene world, when you're working at a specialist office, a periodontal office, where all of my clients have issues in their mouths, my risk exposure to disease was higher. And I was just feeling like I couldn't take care of my body because I'd have to rush to get the kids. And I was done. And so I went to get my mortgage license, and luckily I was able to get it done. I finished, there's 26 chapters or whatever. I did the first 20 before I had the baby, finished the last.
Not in Ontario. But.
Well, okay, in BC. Finished the last 6. And then we drove up as a family with a newborn to Vancouver, wrote my exam with the baby. Erik just manned the little newborn baby at the time, and got my license. So that was the end of 2017. And once my daughter went to daycare, I basically hit the ground running. And we started doing that by way of when Erik had been trained, he was all paper. So I spent the first 3 months of our business just converting us to digital. And that was good because it really I had to sort of train myself and what I mean by that is I had to write out our processes and how to do a mortgage and what documents are needed.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to get us a bit of a more system set up and in place. And then I started doing files, and Erik could help me with that. And it just kind of started flowing and working. And yeah, we got organized.
And here you are now.
I proved my worth.
And also going digital got you ready for COVID. I mean, not that you couldn't, but if you weren't prepared for the changes that happened, it would have been more challenging. So once you were digitized and ready to go.
Well, and pre-COVID, it was like there was only like 2 lenders that were even accepting DocuSign. That wasn't even a thing. It was like, everybody.
Right. We forget that. Right now, it seems just second nature. But you're right. There was a lot of lenders, at least in Canada, that did not accept digital signatures, which means you still had to people had to print it off and scan it. It was a nightmare.
It was a nightmare. Yeah.
Well, and I will say that the addition of Elisha was welcomed in the sense that we have very different skill sets. So it really did fill the gaps that I was missing at the time. I'm definitely more of less of an organization guy, and she kind of filled all those gaps of sort of getting everything, as she was saying, there systemized and entered into sort of digital platforms and all that sort of thing. So it was that's actually
good.
Yeah,
that you have different. So I want to talk about branding, because I think you guys do some great stuff around that, but you also approach it differently. So maybe just whoever would like to jump in, but talk to me about how one of you approaches branding and communication. Then I want to get the other person's perspective and what you're doing.
Go for it.
Well, we originally came up with just even our name and brand and logo, and that was it. And that was nothing. And we had that for, the last 8 years or whatever.
Maybe rewind a sec though, because the name wasn't just out of thin air. We did put a lot of thought into that, and assurance really was something that we thought gave people comfort and stability. And that was kind of the thought behind that, is we did want to have that message where people did feel comfortable and they felt assured that they were being taken care of.
Well, and part of that was not branding ourselves at the time, which is funny because we've actually shifted gears. But our original thought was we want to name not our name, because Erik had seen that shift happening with his very first broker owner that he was trained under. He had shifted gears from calling it his name to something else. So that was our first mindset. But then coming into the last 2 years, like we're talking end of 23, early 2024, the mortgage industry had slowed down, and we had spent the previous decade building our business on referral business. And we were actually proud that we had no online presence, which sounds crazy saying out loud now. But at the time, our ego sort of got in our way, and we were like, we are a referral-based business. We don't have socials. We don't have any of that. And so coming into end of 23, where it was a slow year for us, we probably did half of our volume, which was a big shocker for us. And I know a lot of brokers in the industry can relate. So I started diving into what is digital marketing? How can we get ourselves out there? And that's where we had to really dig deep into what does branding even mean? And really, it's not just a name. It's not just a logo. It's not a color set. It's not design. It's who you are. It's your story. And that doesn't mean where did you come from as a mortgage broker. It means what is your life story? Like, what is your butterfly effect that got you from A to B, C, D, where you are now? Because that all plays into effect of your brand, how you treat your clients, and how all of your systems and processes work. And so it's really woven in. And now that we have a better understanding of it, having presence, having brand awareness of who you are is so important. And we now see the value of that.
Yeah, and I think that we do hit, obviously, the sort of the background, the butterfly effect with your personal story, but we definitely weave that in along with a lot of, I'd say, educational content and stuff that has some real meat to it. I like that stuff. I studied economics and political science in university, and I like to really sort of interweave some of those components. I don't like to get overly too deep into it in the sense that I like to take any sort of one different side, but I do like to sort of show how sort of all these external factors are going to play into what we're seeing sort of translate in the real estate market, because I think it's pretty relevant. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like you call it a butterfly effect. I've always called it your origin story, kind of like how you became Batman, or how you're just a regular high schooler, and then you get bit by a radioactive spider, and now you're Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And every superhero has an origin story, and I think every mortgage broker needs to have an origin story, because people are going to ask, like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And the story can actually build trust and credibility and make you more interesting.
Totally.
Or I had nothing else going on, so I just became, okay, I don't really want to work with you. There's nothing there for me to build any. But I've never heard it called a butterfly effect, which that's another same concept.
Well,
so
it
you
also
had this initially. You had
yeah. Sorry, no. I just sort of sort of expand on what you're saying there. It really does also just give people sort of a glimpse into who you are as a person, and people like to relate, right? I mean, I don't think I've ever had a strategy call with a client where there isn't some component of a personal conversation. We all need to do that as brokers, as people that, are building relationships. That's how you build a sustainable business, is you build rapport with people and you connect with them on some level. Obviously, you have to connect with them on the finance level, but I think that when you connect with them a little bit deeper than that, it goes a really long way. And so, yeah, those pieces, they're powerful.
Yeah. And I've often thought too, I totally agree with you on this idea of branding is not your logo, not your website. You really are brand. At the end of the day, I think as we as mortgage brokers need to brand ourselves, because we sell a commodity. We don't like to admit it, but we do have access. We can do things differently in our process, but ultimately we are selling a commodity. And the way you stand out is your unique perspective, your unique voice, your unique how you communicate, and the experience. And I think that's fantastic. And people are coming to you not because of your brand, but because it's you. It's that you could change the name on the door and it's still you, right?
Totally.
And so okay, what do you do different? I'm curious. So maybe get tactical here for me for a second, Elisha. But how would you approach your communication on social versus what Erik's doing?
Oh, okay. Well, I have a way in which I like to plan and more or less script what we want to talk about. Otherwise, I would talk way too long and it would bore everybody. So I have to really think about what I'm saying. But Erik has a history in poli-sci. He's passionate about politics and also just the economy and the markets. So he always does everything related to that and how it affects the mortgage world and real estate. But he also, what we've noticed is when you look at the data within your platforms, wherever you choose to post, it's funny because growing on Instagram feels so slow for us, but we've grown a lot quicker and a lot bigger on TikTok. And the analytics, it really breaks it down in age. And Erik's viewers, even though we're one brand under our TikTok.
One account. Yeah.
We're one account. Erik's viewers are men on the older side, like he has a lot more 35 to 55-year-old males, where I have a lot more 25 to 45
I wouldn't
females.
say 50s old, but I'm just speaking from my...
Okay, but
50 is the new 30.
But it's not
50 is the new 30, baby.
We're going to go with that.
But it's not the 18-year-old girlies on TikTok that Erik is attracting, but that's good. It means we can speak to different people when we're marketing.
So who when your content, what do you see in your analytics?
I have more like 18 to 45-year-old females. And I mean, when I say more, I mean over 50%. Like mine would be 60% females in the 25 to 45 range. His is more 60% in the 35 to 55 range. So it is really different.
And more heavily weighted to the men.
And more heavily weighted to the men on him, and mine's more heavily weighted to the women. So it's interesting. So I tend to focus more on first-time buyers or refinance because, and a lot of first-time buyers, the average is getting up and up now, right? It's 36 and then 38. You're not a first-time buyer, or a lot of people aren't first-time buyers as 20-year-olds. So, I focus more on that. And we go outside of, rather than choosing a sort of a client avatar to speak to, we actually talk, because our angle is future focused mortgage solutions where we really want to help people build wealth and retire comfortably, which circles back to our origin story or our butterfly effect. We're both from divorced parents, and all of our parents do not have enough to retire comfortably. So our long-term goal is to help our clients from first-time buyers through growth and building wealth into downsizing and retiring comfortably, using their real estate to build wealth for themselves. So Erik's more talking to people in like late phase 2, early phase 3. I'm more talking
the old guys.
The guys, yeah.
Let's go, Erik. Let's go, Erik.
We're doing more of the investment stuff and adding to the portfolio and that sort of thing.
Leveraging your real estate and also like we have a lot of people now looking into reverse mortgages, but that's where Erik is kind of shining, where I'm talking more to people that are in the what we call the foundation phase, and then early stage, maybe first refinance or second purchase of their growth phase. And Erik's talking more about, growth, investing, how to make your money work for you and really grow your wealth, and also the end of it. So we're speaking more to clients that want to stick with us for their journey, and depending on the phase they're in.
But just at different stages. Okay, so you're thinking about this arc of a client.
Yeah.
And instead of one specific client. That's really interesting. And then, what I find interesting about that is that you're using two different voices and two different approaches on the same account, but it still works.
Yeah, it's still working.
Yeah, it's funny because it also, I think it's rooted in how we initialize contact, really. For example, right before we did this podcast here with you, I was on a call with a first-time homebuyer, actually. And one of the main things that I like to focus on in those strategy calls or those discovery calls is really looking at, obviously, the here and now, but really looking forward from there, the next 5 and 10 years down the road and what we're looking to achieve. And it was funny, actually, on that call, I'd asked him about that, and he said, I don't know, I just want to get into an apartment. And, I said, okay, well, that's great, but, why don't we talk about all these other things as well? You don't have to give me any answers right now, because these are things that may be of interest down the road. And, he asked me out for a coffee at the end of the call. I think that when you really start to dig in a little bit more with people like that, what we're trying to achieve is really build that relationship for the journey, so that we have a client from their first purchase all the way till when they retire. They like that, right? A lot of people do like to have a team. They like to have someone in their corner. And I mean, everybody wants to have, a guy. And if they've got a mortgage guy that's helping them out through all these things, they become also not just a good client and possibly a repeat client, but they become a referral partner.
Yeah.
And so those are that's kind of the angle that we take. I know that a lot of people do say focus on one specific pillar, but I think that we do that in a way that actually encapsulates more than just one pillar.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting way to look at it, in terms of your not having I've always said this about good mortgage brokers, like good golfers, you're always thinking about the next shot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're not you don't just get up the tee box and swing for the fences and hope. It's the same thing with your mortgage planning. You're thinking you're thinking 3 or 4 holes ahead in terms of these other transactions and building wealth. And it changes the whole dynamic of the conversation.
Totally.
And I have an accountant that I could probably go find a cheaper accountant, but he's really good, and he's planning things far enough out that I'm actually not as concerned about the short-term price. I'm concerned more about the long-term cost.
Totally. Totally.
And what that does is it gets you out of the 0.01% rate game, and you're having a completely different relationship with that client, which I love that.
Well, we sort of say to our clients, like, it's a given that we're going to try and get you the best rate, but that's not the thing here. We're trying to service you as a whole. We want to help you with your long-term plan. At the end of the day, that little 0.1 rate is not going to be the deciding factor. And I mean, half of our business, or probably even more, is our returning clients with refinances, renewals, restructuring, whatever. And I think that's why we like to position ourselves and everybody else as the dream team for our clients, whether it's a financial planner we're referring them to, a lawyer we've worked with closely, their realtor. We want them to feel like we are all working for them. And it's not like, hey, this year I'm going to use this realtor, this year I'm going to bounce around. We want our clients to know that when you're locked in with us, we are going to care for you. You can call us anytime. We're here. We're on speed dial for you.
Well, yeah. And I mean, also just like what you said, down the road, you might save more money. I think that's one message that a lot of brokers, I think everybody knows it, but maybe they fail to address or maybe fail to articulate clearly or effectively, is that interest rate, yeah, it's important. Everybody wants to save money, but interest rate's not the only way that you can save money in a mortgage. There's so many other components that weigh into overall cost and, potential future expenses. And so those are the things that I think people appreciate when you really dive into that and show them strategy, different ways of structuring mortgages, different ways of tax planning, things like the cash damming strategies, those sorts of things for investors. Once you start getting into those sorts of things and you look at your actual cost, in many cases, you're actually cheaper even with a higher interest rate. And so
totally
being able to really communicate that to a client, I think it holds its weight in gold.
Well, and that's a big thing for you too, Erik. Erik, we have a lot of business for self and a lot of alt and private clients. And that is a huge conversation. Like if we do this now compared to, whatever you're already in or what you came in here thinking you needed, we are actually saving you a lot of money. And again, like you said, Scott, it's like short-term pain for long-term gain, because if we structure it this way or we do this, maybe you're paying a little bit more, or maybe you're saving this much in taxes, but you're paying a teeny bit more in interest rate. And that's where, it's not just about the
It's got to be the cost. I think it's the price versus cost. People are focused on price, but what is the actual cost? The cost of that. And the cost is not just the mortgage. There's other factors. It could be taxes. It could be.
Totally.
And good mortgage brokers know how to communicate that in a way to the client that they go, oh, I want you to be my person. And that's what my accountant, what do I do here?
Yeah.
I could go on ChatGPT and ask the questions, but it's not the same as me talking to somebody who knows my entire setup of all my corps and can give me very strategic advice.
Totally.
And there's a big value to that. Totally. I want to talk about now your guys, how you guys divide the work. So do you do the same thing? What does that look like?
No, we definitely don't. I mean, we do.
Clear.
There is overlap, but I would say I would do strategy. So I would do all the initial calls and the strategy. So I would structure the file. And then we kind of, from there, I would say that would be primarily me. Elisha is primarily on the admin side. So she does all of the compliances and the sign docs and all of those sorts of things.
But if we're talking client like flow, it would be Erik does majority of the initial intake call, like discovery calls, and kind of loose strategy so that we at least know what we're going into and what documents we're going to need, whether it's going to be a cash flow approach, whether it's going to be a standard employee file, whatever. And then we send out the application, it comes back, and I typically do the once over of the application, request the strategic docs that, if the automations are almost never correct. So I go in and add in whatever we need. And then from there, typically I will formulate the pre-approval and be in contact with the client from that. So we are both, the client feels comfortable with either one of us, but oftentimes clients lean more heavily to either Erik or I. So whether I'm doing the pre-approval and he's doing the strategy call, the client ends up having a relationship a little stronger with one of us typically. And that's who ends up staying in more close communication. And then, from basically like live deal, once it's submitted onwards, it's whoever has been in closest contact with the client. And then we just take it to end. And then, I tend to do the compliance packages and all that jazz at the end.
And then you also are doing the marketing as well, right?
I'm doing yes, exactly. So I'm actually planning on we're hoping to hire somebody to start doing a little bit more of the sort of documents and compliance fulfillment so
stuff.
that I can then have more time to do the marketing side of things. Because I really enjoy it. I just don't have the time to do everything I want to be doing. So what I'm outputting is probably 30% of what I want to be actually marketing.
I would also say that one of the things that I think is really neat about our unique situation is, sometimes as a broker you get a file and if some of these files are quick, some of them can drag on. And sometimes when you have a file that drags on and on and on, you can get a bit of a mental block on it or some sort of a block somewhere along the way. And when that happens, it's really nice to be able to have the other person pick up where you left off so that because they're coming in with a fresh set of eyes. They're coming in with...
It's kind of like parenting in a way.
Yes.
When your kid has worn you out and you think, I'm going to lose my mind, and the other parent swoops in and goes, I got this. And then gets you a bit of space, because often the parent that's too close to it sometimes, or you can get frustrated or just don't see things.
Totally. Sometimes it'll be one of those things that's like, babe, I can't do another reworking of this file. And it'll be like late at night after the kids have gone down. We're like, let's just figure it out together. And then it gives it fresh energy. And then the next day, okay, perfect. We can deal with it. So
you can handle it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Last thing I want to ask you guys about is being married and working together, because I know there's a lot of mortgage brokers listening to this going, that would be the worst. It would be, how does that, like, what's your advice for people that are either married and want to thinking about working together or,
Well, I'll preface it by when we first started out, I didn't want to do it.
He had extreme...
I had been warned by countless people, do not work with your wife.
Not against me, against working with your partner in general.
Your wife is a general rule, yes.
A general rule of thumb.
It's like don't eat yellow snow. It's kind of general knowledge that you just...
And I kind of, to be perfectly honest, I had never done something like that. And I liked having my independence, but I also knew... She said, I'm either going to work with you or I'm going to go work at Starbucks. I'm not going back to dental hygiene. And I needed help. I figured we'd keep the money in the family, and we said we'd give it a shot. And however many years later now.
The first year I came on, we doubled our volume, and the second year we doubled it again. So I proved my worth, and it gave him more confidence. That said, it's not like we don't have hard days.
We were growing every year, but it was a huge jump, because I kind of got to a point where I felt like I was at capacity, and then she gave us the opportunity to really take that next step.
Yeah. But it's not easy. We don't have easy days, but we're pretty good at compartmentalizing things. Like when we're working, our desks actually face each other. We're both hiding behind our computers, but we face each other. And we actually gave ourselves a rule for 2025. If I ask you to pause what you're doing and do this thing for me or send me this thing, we're just going to say yes, so that we're not pissing each other off. And
right.
That's one of the only things that really got in the way, was us doing those things. And, I have to say, we put little silly systems in place that are probably wastes of paper, but help us out. We still take a physical, we call it a client lead inventory form, and that's where all our initial notes go on the file. And then we also,
we do input that into our CRM as well,
afterwards.
But we do have a paper copy, because I'm old school like that, and I do like to sometimes look through paper.
You're not even that old, dude. You're like, listen, you're talking like you're old school. What are you, 40?
43?
Yeah, 43.
But it's the same thing,
23.
like for our appraisals. It's not like, hey, I need you to do this for me. Whoever's ordering it writes it out. We have like a sheet, and then hands it to the other person. And then, you've got a stack of your little to-dos that you get done. And that's how we kind of ask each other without asking each other. So it doesn't feel like you're constantly, being asked by your spouse to do all the little to-dos. It doesn't feel like I'm doing the dishes every night. It's okay, here you go. And it just,
right.
Yeah. I don't know. That helps. Yeah. And we're also really good. If we do get in disagreements, we actually are really good at communicating over text. I know that sounds funny, but we'll go in separate rooms and write out nicely worded text to explain our points of view.
Use ChatGPT.
Okay. I haven't tried
How do I convince her that I'm right? I'm just kidding.
But
Just says, keep saying what you're saying.
And I think you just have to learn to let it go, which I think in any relationship, working together or not, part of growth in relationships is learning to not sweat the small stuff. And it's the same in business. If if you have a spouse that you're considering working with, don't do it if you guys get in fights all the time and can't let things go, because that is going to fester in your business. But if you can move past it and see the bigger picture and the greater good for the business and your relationship, then you can probably
And it's not like you guys have, how many kids do you have?
3.
And you have 3 kids. So, I mean, you know, I had 3 kids. They're older now, but someone told me once when I had our 3rd, 3 kids is like a blender with the lid off.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. That's what it was like when they were little.
And we have 2 dogs and 4 properties. So we are busy.
Yeah. You have a lot going on, but that's good advice. And then, so what has been the hardest part about making sure that you guys stay spouses, not just business partners?
Yeah, that's kind of the balancing act. I like to be able to have a moment where we can shut it off and just be couple. I found that we used to do a lot more of that. There's been a phase here where Elisha wants to talk business all night.
Okay, I get really excited about marketing now. So often I can't shut it off because if I don't have time in the day, I want to yap his ear off at night. But
so we do that. But I do think that there is definitely a ton of value. One of the things that frankly, we've kind of, we haven't been doing as frequently lately, but something that we made a point of doing for almost since the beginning of her working with me or us working together was on Friday, usually like a late afternoon or no, early afternoon, late lunch. We would go and do a bit of a lunch date.
Like before picking up the kids from school, we would try and sneak away because we're too busy at night. We have too many sports. We can't have a weekly date night out, but we can have a weekly day date. And so that's what we did. We'd go have a lunch out, dress up nice, and make that, 1 or 2 hours where we can just get away, turn work off, and just enjoy each other's company. Yeah. And that was, that's what we did. So you have to
put, and everybody has to do what, but the fact that you've actually put some structures around that working relationship to be able to make that work.
Well, and we both give ourselves 2 hours every day. So we get up at 5 every day. I have my quiet time working out and saunaing from 5 to 7, and Erik goes to the gym from 7 to 9, and we're back at work starting at 9. So that 2 hours to start our day both sets us on the right track to work, but we've also had our quiet time alone.
Right. I think that's good because you still need to be, the separateness is important.
Yeah.
Something I'm learning about is you have together, but then you got to have your own, you have to show up as a full you to the relationship. And to do that, you need to have time to invest in that. So kudos to you guys for building that in. I think that's an easy thing to miss. I'm glad you shared it because I think if you miss that, it could make the whole thing not work very well.
Totally.
Yeah, the morning workout it's our therapy. It's my therapy for sure. If I don't get to the gym in the morning, it throws my whole day off. So you're 100% bang on there. That it's not really just about
it's not about
the
fitness.
Physical health per se.
No.
That part obviously is nice, but it's the mental health. It's getting there, being able to just focus on what I'm doing, lift a few weights, do some cardio, whatever.
Yeah.
And just hit that reset button, and then I can start fresh. I always feel energized after that, and I always feel ready to go.
And it's like, it doesn't matter if it's a crappy workout. You've gotten out of the house. You've had your you time, even if it is a crappy workout. And
any day that I miss it, it's a game changer. Yeah, it definitely.
We try to treat it.
And if you did that too many days in a row, you're not going to show up as the best version of you, which then means it's going to affect the work and relationship.
Yeah. Mental health starts to go down real quick when we don't get our morning workouts in.
Okay. Last question, where can people find you guys online? This has been a lot of fun, by the way. Thanks for coming to chat.
Instagram, we are at Assurance Mortgages, and TikTok, we are Elisha.Erik.mortgages. And those are our main 2 platforms.
And Erik is it's like the Viking.
The Viking way, yes. I'm Swedish. I'm of Swedish descent. My mother's from Sweden. So.
Well, I am too.
Right. And if nobody can see you in this conversation, but I've met you in person. You're a big dude, so you got that Viking blood.
I do.
A Viking football player.
Yeah, back in the day, anyways. But we like to keep that Viking thing going on here. So we kept the tradition going with our kids' names.
Hey, thanks again for listening. And hopefully you found this conversation to be insightful as well as to see what's possible. As I always say, there's no problem in your mortgage business that someone else hasn't already solved. The problem is who's got the answer. The idea with this podcast is to provide some of those answers. A couple of ways you can stay connected. One, each week I create a 3-2-1 email, 3 ideas from me, 2 amazing resources, and 1 tactic to help you grow your mortgage business. It's short, punchy, and it's been growing in terms of the response as well as the feedback that we've been getting on it. We put a lot of time into it. If you're interested in that, you can click on the show notes to this. You can email me, Scott at I Love Mortgage Broker, and I'll add you to it. Or you can find me on social in my link tree. Click on that, and you can go and get added to that email list. Check it out. Thanks again for listening. I'm Scott Peckford, and I will see you on the next episode.